I'll say. All right, guys, welcome back to Something Cool. Still searching for the name. So today we're here with Steven, also in the videography industry. Great creator, has great content. We'll leave his link below in the description. Do go check him out. But yeah, so today we're going to focus a bit on creative storytelling, how to use it, how to implement it, and then just a lot of the features around that. So yeah, let's kick the day off, guys. Steven, welcome.
Right. Cool. Thanks, guys, for having me. It's really cool to be part of a podcast and to be featuring on your show.
Thanks for being here today.
100%.
So, Stephen, tell me, what is storytelling and why is it important?
Storytelling, by definition, is like an exchange of people's experiences in cultures and society and stuff like that. And it can be used in a sense to sort of share people's experiences or to just create a narrative, fictional story for people to help people grow and evolve and learn from each other's experiences.
Okay.
And that's like the definitive thing of storytelling.
How would you say the storytelling can be implemented in a business perspective? Meaning, if a company wants to advertise a product or service, how would they use storytelling as a key to gain gain the attention of the audience?
So the thing, like you guys spoke actually about that in your previous podcast, about the whole image of a brand or a company, and that image is created by storytelling.
Okay.
So using stories to relate to people and your customers and your target audience is a way to relate to them to sort of boost your company and get them involved in what you're doing. So an example is sort of like if you were to take, let's say, shoes. If you were to just take a picture of a pair of shoes, upload that to Facebook and leave it there, then people are just going to scroll past. They're just going to be like, shoes, whatever. But now you take that same picture of shoes and you put in like a mountain in the background and a beautiful sunset, and all of a sudden you incorporate these elements that people can relate to. So in this sense, you'll be doing like visual storytelling. So you'll be telling them through this image who the shoes are for, what you can use it for, and almost immediately any kind of hiker or jogger or some outdoorsy person would see this image and they'd be like, these look like cool shoes. That's beautiful. And subconsciously they can relate to this product. And through storytelling, they would very likely be they would rather buy your shoes if they were to see this landscape and image.
Yeah, because they feel more involved in the product. Okay.
If you're a shoe company that has a wide range of shoes, so do you need to tell the story of, if you tell the story of hiking, does your company need to have that experience in hiking or the background or?
Well, if that sort of comes down to sort of like testimonies, if people know this brand like Adidas or whatever, their shoes are for like running and sports and stuff like that. And if they were to make high heels, then people would very likely associate the heels with sports. Like, are these running heels? What's the point of the heels? So there will still be a part of the brand associated with that. So in a sense, you couldn't just go and take one product and just market it in a completely different way. You will need some kind of proof or backstory, like you're saying, to sort of motivate why you're doing that. You can still do that with high heels and use that sporty element and sort of have female athletes that are running in their Adidas and then put on their heels and then they go to the after party and sort of incorporate that brand with its image. But I think if you were to just take something and just throw it in something else, it's very likely going to be unsuccessful.
Yes, I don't think it's necessary to have the background in a certain industry. Helps, for sure it does. I think the experience does help a lot. But I think with today, there's a lot of tools you can use for research, for instance, ChatGPT. If you want to know anything, basically, you just got to type it in. So I don't think it's a crucial thing, but I do think it's an advantage to have experience in that certain background which you are marketing it.
I like what you said. You mentioned how you create that backstory. Like, I said is you don't need to have the experience, but to create the backstory. Oh, I love the idea of the woman running and then after that putting her heels on. So that transition from the sport to formal wear is a great slope that I can see that they can implement. So that was basically the question is, do you need to have a certain experience or background in an industry and to market it, or can you just throw it in? But I think you answered it quite well, to gradually expose the market to your current audience?
Yeah, see, the thing is, it all comes down to who your target audience is at that time. So if you're a new company starting out, then obviously you're not going to have any backstory or experience. So then you're going to have to show them what your product can do. You're going to have to demonstrate who it's for, what it can do, and why they should buy that instead of anything else. And that's where you can use storytelling elements to motivate these sort of who, what, why questions in your products.
Let's create like an example. You're saying like storytelling elements, but not everyone is quite sure what that is. So let's say, for instance, we're going to use the example that, like you said, Adidas, and now there's the running shoe, and then we're going to incorporate it over to after the evening where she's going to put on the high heels. So if the story had to be told, let's say a 30-second advert, just a short, how would that play out?
Well, so no matter how long your story is going to be, you sort of, with whatever you do, the sort of the elements of a story comes down, in my opinion, to the who and how, and then the conclusion, the why, and that's the big thing. You can't, without the why, sort of, what's the point then? There needs to be a point. So you've got certain ingredients. So that's what I got, this burger analogy that I just can't get out my head.
Then throw your burger.
I got these ingredients, and basically to tell a story is like a burger. You need a bun, you need a patty, and another bun. There you got a burger, which is basically your setup. It's a 3-act system. So you got a setup, you got a conflict, and you got a conclusion.
Right.
So the setup being the who, the conflict being like the almost like the why, the what, and then the conclusion being, well, that would then be the why, I suppose. Where if you take these elements, so this burger now, you got the bun, you got the setup. So after that, okay, so you bought your burger. You got the who, what, and the why. So you got your setup, you got your conflict, and you got your conclusion. You can add ingredients, other storytelling ingredients, like theme, which like slicing a couple of tomatoes on. There's your theme. And then you can incorporate things like the setting, where are we, what time is it, what year is it, things like that, which is like slapping on some cheese. And so you can add all these extra little ingredients to motivate the 3-act system that you got there.
Right.
But so to put it in a practical example, if you were to take like this whole shoe thing, no matter how long this ad needs to be, you need the first act, the setup. So we need to see, okay, so there's an athlete, so there's a person, and they've got a goal. They are on their way somewhere, so they need that goal. Then you need the conflict, the challenges that they have to go through. So the training, the exercise, the big race that they run. And then after this big race, after their conflict, they celebrate, and now they're going to go and celebrate with their friends. And there you sort of got your conclusion that, okay, so now whatever this thing is representing is to go celebrate and have fun with your friends. And that's where the heels come in to sort of associate that release or that resolution with or achievement, like you said, with these shoes. These shoes are for fun. That's the conclusion. That's the point we're trying to make here.
Okay.
So
Right.
It also, when it comes to the conflict, and that's another thing with storytelling, people often think it has to be like a plot twist. It has to be the opposite. But it doesn't always necessarily have to be a negative conflict. It can also be a good conflict.
But like good conflict.
A practical example with my own work is with my short film Isolation. There's a little boy who can't sleep. That's sort of the plot, basically. And if you were to break it down, the setup is he's lying in bed, he can't sleep, and he needs to find a way to get himself tied up. And then that's where the conflict happens, where this kid starts using his imagination to make these shapes and all sorts of little images. And he goes on this massive imagination adventure, which is then the conflict. But as you can see, it's not really a conflict because it's a good thing, but it still conflicts or confronts the idea of going to bed. It's the opposite of going to bed. So the conflict doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it's sort of got to conflict with getting the end result that you were looking for in the beginning.
Okay.
And so through the rest of the film, then this kid runs around, tires himself out from all this strenuous activity, and he's satisfied, and he starts falling asleep and dozing off. And there's your conclusion. He goes to bed.
So can businesses use the 3-act storytelling thing with the conflict that you now mentioned? Is there a way that they can incorporate their problems or their customers' problems as a way of a conflict and how to address that. So if a company has a problem of not reaching their customers due to, let's call it the time of day. There's a radio station that plays at 5 a.m. Most people are asleep. How would they tell the story to showcase their conflict of people are still asleep?
Well, yeah, they can definitely express that in some form of ad. And that's another thing. Storytelling is also through any kind of media. So it can be visual media, images, videos. It can be audio. It can be sound. It can be dialogue. It can be poems. Storytelling is anything that it have the characteristics of having a character, a goal or plot, a setup, a conflict, and a resolution. So in that sense, they can literally take the problem that they have and use that as the actual like conflict in their ad, because it's probably going to be a radio ad that they are going to play on the radio sometime throughout the day. So they'll obviously need to play that through the afternoon when people can hear that.
Yes.
And then they can emphasize their lack of listening-ship. Is that what you call their viewers that aren't on their they can use that as a tool in the ad to demonstrate their issues and then overcome it in their system and motivate people to listen to their channel. Okay, so if your radio station was playing at 5 in the morning, then immediately people sort of associate that with that. Well, if you say 5 in the morning, that's early and it's not late. So you can get people to listen to your station by getting them to wake up a bit earlier and motivating them with things that are associated with waking up early, being fresh, being ready for the day, and sort of saying, you know how you got the saying, start your day with a cup of coffee, and sort of, let's say this was Lekker Radio, then, start your day with Lekker Radio. Wake up early, wake up to the sound of our sweet tunes, instead of waking up to the sound of your blaring alarm. And then emphasizing the, strong points from their side, and also the negative points of the other side. So like in a radio ad, you'd have just sort of literally tell your listeners what the problem is. Like, do you wake up annoyed because your alarm is like,
it's his bloody alarm. I literally set my alarm 2 minutes before his because I don't want to hear his freaking alarm buzzing off in the morning.
So there you go. Your problem can be solved by waking up to the sounds of Lekker FM, by setting your cell phone's alarm linked to their station app, and wake up to sweet tunes, sort of take a problem, solve it for them, and then give it to them.
Okay.
And that's sort of essentially what most things are in advertisement, is sort of problem solving.
Right.
Like if you think about those ads you see on TV, you always got that, does this ever happen to you? And then the guy spills milk all over the floor, or, stuff like that, or Outsurance. Are you struggling to get your payments? Well, go to Outsurance and you can, and they always sort of start with the issue so that okay, this is what it's about. This is a problem I do have. I can relate to that. And you say you're going to solve my problem? Okay, let me see.
Yes.
And then they sort of get their answers.
Yeah, so they basically use that as the hook, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
So problems. The key is problems.
So what would be elements to avoid in storytelling?
So there's quite a few good, this is also more relating to the filmmaking aspect of that. You can check Ryan Connolly on Film Riot said in there, I think top 10 mistakes beginner filmmakers make and how to avoid them. It's pretty cool. And they mentioned I think the first one is don't go with your first idea. And I think that's relevant everywhere, because your first idea is probably not your best idea. Somebody else probably had that idea, and it's sort of just the basic idea. So if you go with your first idea and you commit to that idea, then you're very likely going to line yourself up for disaster, because there are better things going to come along the way.
Yes.
And you aren't going to do those things because you're going to be focused like, no, but I got to commit to this first idea. So don't commit to your first idea. You can use it as a reference. You got to start somewhere. So come up with 10 ideas and then revise them and think of 10 other ideas, and then you go through it and go back to your first idea, and then you'll probably notice the first one wasn't all that great. And like version 20 is probably like a really fine-tuned, refined version of that first idea. So the concept can sort of be the same, but don't commit to that very first idea.
Okay. Rather build off of it.
Rather, yeah, you build off of it. And the other thing, and big thing to avoid when coming up with a story is procrastinating. Which sounds obvious, but there's often this thing of you get this idea and you don't immediately start writing things down and developing. You're like, oh, cool, I've got the idea. So it's there and I can do this thing and I'll come back to it. But chances are you won't. 90% of like these great spontaneous ideas that I've had that I've put aside just sort of died out. And all the ones that I got like, 12 at night sitting there and I'm like, oh, but I want to go to bed, but let me just, go write this down real quick. The next day it's like, oh, it's kind of exciting. Start thinking of ideas and the ways to develop it. And then boom, that turns into your next short film. So don't procrastinate. Don't commit to your first idea, but do start somewhere.
So why would you say don't commit to your first idea? Because how I feel is if you have an idea and you are able to commit for it, go for it. Even if it dies in 2 weeks' time or it fails in 2 weeks' time, I did a lot more in those 2 weeks' time if I did nothing. If I said, okay, I'll wait for the next idea or I'll write it down or...
So definitely, like, that's why I said do start. So you can take that idea and jump and start making something, but don't commit to literally the first idea. So if you were to put it in like writing and give it a short description of guy, like you want to make a short film and your first idea is a guy with big feet struggles to climb a mountain, and you're fixed on that idea, like he struggles to climb a mountain, and you're planning this thing out and you're thinking realistically about your budget and how you're going to do this thing, how you're going to give this guy big feet and stuff. And you sort of struggle because you're so committed to guy with big feet climbs mountain, and you don't revise that, you don't want to change it, and you try and work around that, you're going to struggle. If you get it right and it works out, it's still going to be a massive struggle. But if you take some time to develop that idea and think of a few other things, you can realize, but why does he need to have big feet? Why not pivot away from the comedy factor and maybe go a bit more into a serious factor, like a guy climbing a mountain, like Mount Everest, or something along those lines, like the struggles of a person climbing a mountain. Because the main thing is you want somebody to climb a mountain.
Yeah.
Does he really does he need big feet? And if you commit to that first idea, just the idea, not the project, just the idea, then you're going to struggle.
Okay. So do the project and
revise your idea or whatever happens. Like 90% of filmmaking is problem solving. And you got this idea in your head of like, there's this shot where this person walks through the sun rays, and you commit to that idea in your head. And you get the day to the set and it's cloudy and you can't get that sun ray shot. Your brain is going to be closed to any other ideas because you're not going to be thinking, okay, there's no sun, what can we do? Is there a way around it? Is there a way to shoot something else? You're going to think we need sun. Camera, brain needs sun, and that's sort of your thinking process. And then the next day, you're going to reschedule a shoot. It's going to cost more money. You're going to struggle some more. And the end result might not even be as good as what it could have been if you settled for something else or made a plan on the day and changed your story.
Now, how would businesses approach this thing of set ideas? So let's say, for example, your boss says he wants this type of content. He wants to showcase, let's say the shoes for Adidas example. He wants to showcase this athlete running and wearing heels. And you as the marketing manager realize this idea is it's gonna cost a lot of money. You don't have the budget for it. How would you approach this in a way to pivot off of ideas where your boss or your client is set on they want this specific content?
Well, in the case of having to pitch something to them to try and move away from their initial idea, I think comes a lot of headaches, admin and talking and meetings and stuff like that. But essentially the thing that you'll probably want to pitch then is work on mood boards and storyboards with a bunch of visualizers and stuff so that they can see your image, because they'll likely tell you they want this, this, and that. And sometimes you can immediately see that's not going to work. It's their product, but you as a filmmaker know what people like and enjoy, and you know people are not going to enjoy that. So then you've got to show them what people will enjoy. And that's sort of where a person can go to stock footage and sites like that, where you can put a mood board together of stock images to show them the vibe that you are referring to. And you can get stock footage of people doing similar actions of the thing that you want, and you can grade that and you can edit that into like a little mock ad to show them exactly what you mean. But then always add a few variations, a few ideas, because it's in the pre-planning phase. And I think the most important thing, something I like to do, is take the idea that they want, and I don't know if it might be a bit messed up in a small sense, but take their idea if you know it's not going to work, and sort of make like a half-assed version of their idea. And then you take your idea and you make a full-assed version of your idea, and you show them the difference. And then they can see like, oh wow, okay, yours is better, I like your idea. Because then you know that when you work on the project, you're going to do the full, your best work. You're going to commit everything into it because it's your idea. It's a fixed idea of it's a fixed version of their idea, basically.
So at least they feel then you built off of what it was.
Yeah, because the thing is, you take what they have, you use that as input, and then you deliver something similar but different. There's a reason why they came to you. If they know exactly what they want, then why don't they just shoot it themselves? It's because they don't know what they want.
Yes.
They think they do, but they don't.
Just one last question before we sign off. In terms of the storytelling and the creative, what helps you to keep that creativeness active? Because some people, you go sit and you think, okay, I'm going to write something down, and then the tap runs dry and there's nothing that really helps for ideas. Some people, I know it helps them to perhaps just go walk around a bit or do something totally out of their environment to spark that creativeness. What is your process to be creative?
A lot of it.
Water, coffee.
Yeah, good water in the morning.
At 5 a.m.
Yeah, yes, and then I brush my teeth. No, I'm kidding. When it comes to motivation, that's still a tough one, I think, for any kind of creative, to just get motivated and get ideas. It's not like you're an idea machine. And once you start approaching it like that, you start running dry, because then you lose that passion because you're just pumping out a bunch of content because. So it's always a tough one for me as well. I find I often take long breaks between projects to sort of recuperate and relax and just avoid that kind of thing. So like you say, get away from your job and focus maybe on a different kind of hobby or something. So in a working 9-to-5 sense, that would be like just taking some breaks, just literally getting up, walking away, having a cup of coffee or whatever, and then getting back to it, and not putting any pressure on, not trying to force something out, but just to, let whatever happens happen.
Yes.
And that's why I said earlier also, it's important, if you have an idea, to develop it. Don't commit to the first one, but develop the idea, because that's normally those moments of passion that hit you, those moments of motivation. So the second you get an idea, no matter what time of the day it is, even if you can't execute it now, write it down and then get to it, because it's very likely that in those moments when it hits you and you start working on it is when you're going to get a good idea rolling. But I mean, it's I think that's to each their own type of thing. I often struggle with motivation, but I think the most important thing would be to just always be creating stuff, even if it is bad. Like, don't get too hyped up about it, but just keep creating. Instead of, like you were saying earlier, instead of just sitting and doing nothing, do something. But you don't have to put so much pressure on it. Like the director from Annabelle, Shazam, and other great films. His name is David Sandberg. He's got a YouTube channel. That's actually how they got him to direct his first movie. He made a horror short called Lights Out, and then a Hollywood director phoned him and he was like, or producer phoned him and said, hey, do you have a full script? Do you want to come make this? And long story short, he ended up becoming a Hollywood director. Right. But although he's this Hollywood director working on Shazam and all these big budget projects, he still has his YouTube channel as an outlet. He's still just making for the sake of making.
Yes.
And in his last video he posted, he still said at the end, like, could I have done this better? Could I have done a nice color grade? Could I have shot like this instead of just running around the house with my camera? Yes, I could have, but I didn't want to. And he anyways made something, and it was great. Just to make stuff to make stuff. Like, why did you get started in the first place?
Yeah. I think that's the most crucial thing, especially writing it down, because I think it's the way your mind probably works. Is the moment you have an idea and you write it down, then your mind thinks, okay, cool. There's action taken on this. So if there wasn't any action taken, then your mind might have thought that, okay, it's not needed for me to complete this process. But I think if you write it down after a while, it becomes muscle memory.
Yeah.
So I think that also sparks the creative.
Like I often make the mistake of saying, if it's important, then I will remember. And then I forget. And like the next day I'm sitting there, I'm like, but what was it? The thing I had when I was in the bath was perfect. But I didn't write it down. And I was like, I'll remember. And now I forgot, but it was really cool.
Yeah.
And now I actually do remember because I did write it. That memory is coming back to me. And it was a video about matte painting landscapes. So I got to write that down.
Okay, we'll get you a pen. Save that.
Yeah, so you got that. My next video will be about matte painting landscapes.
Great. Yeah, well, Stephen, thanks so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed your burger analogy very much. We'll try to get some extra cheese and tomato and lettuce for our storytelling and the creative
rushing.
Yeah, but yet again, great to have you here, and it was phenomenal listening to how you approach storytelling.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. And just keep in mind, everything I say is my personal experience. 90% of it is probably garbage, but that 10% you can take away. I hope it helps you guys.
I think the experience counts a lot more than the knowledge, because the experience was you completed an act and you learned from it. So I think that's all value.
And that's great, that if people can just do things and learn from that, that's what life is about.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you next time.